year 2387, when Earth had finally opened its arms to the stars and formed alliances with several advanced alien civilizations, war still found a way to burn across galaxies like wildfire. The human-alien coalition stood strong against the Void Reavers, shape-shifting, planet-consuming horrors that emerged from the dark spaces between solar systems. Among the front lines of this endless battle was a modest human mechanic named Joran Vex, a wiry man with grease-stained fingers, a mop of unruly brown hair, and a heart too big for his own good. He wasn't a soldier by training, but his genius with fusion cores and plasma conduits made him invaluable on the mobile war station Auriga Prime, a massive vessel drifting near the edge of known space. It was here, amid flashing red alarms, the hum of warp engines, and the occasional explosion in distant corridors, that Joran's life spiraled into chaos. Not because of war, but because of love, misunderstanding, and one very awkward proposal. The blue-skinned warrior women of the Zelthri race were legends among the coalition forces. Tall, fierce, with skin the color of deep ocean twilight and flowing white hair like frozen starlight. They moved with silent grace, their eyes glowing faint silver under battle helmets, and they carried weapons forged from crystallized lightning. Among them was Silra, a commander whose reputation preceded her. She once held an entire Reaver platoon at bay with nothing but a broken rifle and her bare hands. She was also, unbeknownst to Joran, quietly in love with him. For months, she watched him from afar during briefings, admired how he fixed damaged drones with a smile, and once saved her life by rerouting power to her suit mid-combat. She never spoke of her feelings, not out of fear, but because among the Zelthri, love was earned through deeds, not words. And so she waited, patient, proud, and painfully silent. Then there was Zanara. Zanara was Silra's younger cousin, equally blue, equally white-haired. But where Silra was calm and disciplined, Zanara was wild, impulsive, and prone to dramatic gestures. She had joined the front lines more for glory than duty and had a habit of flirting with anyone who looked at her twice, even if it was just to check if her armor was malfunctioning. When she first saw Joran trying to weld a shattered thruster array while dangling upside down from a maintenance beam, she laughed so hard she nearly fell off her hoverbike. That laugh, loud and unapologetic, echoed through the hangar and caught Joran's attention. He blushed, dropped his tools, and nearly electrocuted himself. From that moment, Zanara decided she liked him, though whether it was genuine affection or just the thrill of teasing a flustered human, even she wasn't sure. The disaster happened during a rare moment of peace. The Auriga Prime had just survived a brutal ambush, and the crew gathered in the central dome for a victory toast. Real alcohol, imported at great cost, soft music piped from Earth, and flickering holograms of home. Joran, still buzzing from adrenaline and 3 glasses of something called nebula nectar, found himself cornered by Zanara near the dessert table. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes gleaming. "You know," she said, voice low and playful, "you're the only human I've seen who doesn't scream when my people walk by." "I screamed the first time," Joran admitted, scratching his neck. "But then I realized you guys are basically just tall, glowy librarians with guns." Zanara threw her head back and laughed. "Librarians with guns. I like that." She stepped closer. "You're funny, and brave, and you fixed my pulse cannon after that last fight. No one's ever done that for me." Joran blinked. Was she flirting? Again? This was becoming a regular thing. Every time he turned around, Zanara was there, leaning over his console, accidentally bumping into him, asking if he wanted to watch meteor showers from Observation Deck 7. He didn't mind it exactly. She was charming in a whirlwind kind of way. But every time she came near, he caught sight of Silra across the room, standing stiffly by the command terminal, watching them with unreadable eyes. And that made his stomach twist. Still, in the warmth of celebration, with the nebula outside painting the dome in swirls of violet and gold, Joran felt bold. Maybe it was the nebula nectar. Maybe it was the fact that Zanara was smiling at him like he'd just solved the mysteries of the universe. Either way, when she said, "You know, among my people, a real gesture means everything," Joran panicked. He thought she was hinting. He thought this was his moment. So, without thinking, he dropped to one knee, pulled out the only ring he had, a small titanium band he used to test electromagnetic fields, and said, loud enough for half the room to hear, "Zanara, will you, bond with me in the way of your people?" Silence, then gasps, then laughter. Zanara stared at him wide-eyed, then burst into giggles so loud they echoed off the metal walls. "You," You think I'm Silra? She wheezed, clutching her sides. Oh stars. You proposed to the wrong warrior. Joran froze. His face went from pink to deep crimson in seconds. Wait, what? Across the room, Silra stiffened. Her silver eyes locked onto the scene. Her jaw clenched. Without a word, she turned and walked away, her boots clicking sharply against the floor. Joran scrambled to his feet, the fake ring still in his hand. I didn't know. You both look. Wait, no, that's not it. I thought. He looked around desperately. Is this a joke? Are you messing with me? Zanara wiped tears from her eyes. Oh no, it's not a joke. We do look alike. Same clan, same bloodline. But Silra is the elder, the respected one, the one who actually likes you. She smirked. And you just proposed to me like I'm some random dancer from Rigel 9. Joran wanted to vanish. He wanted the floor to open up and swallow him whole. Instead, he stammered an apology and fled the room, the ring clutched tightly in his fist like a cursed relic. The next morning, the Ariga Prime buzzed with rumors. Human mechanic proposes to Zelthari warrior, wrong one, flashed across message boards. Soldiers snickered in the mess hall. Even the AI assistant chirped, congratulations on your interspecies engagement, Joran Vex. Every time he entered a room, he reprogrammed it within 10 minutes. But worse than the embarrassment was the silence from Silra. She avoided him completely. No more quiet nods in the corridor. No more subtle glances during strategy meetings. She trained harder, fought longer, and spoke only when necessary. Joran tried to approach her once, near the armory, but she turned and walked away without a word. The pain in her eyes cut deeper than any plasma blade. Meanwhile, Zanara seemed to take the whole thing as a personal challenge. If Joran had accidentally proposed to her, then she was going to make sure he meant it eventually. She started showing up everywhere he was. Breakfast. There she was, sliding into the seat beside him with a plate of glowing blue fruit. Repair shift. She needed her sidearm recalibrated for the 10th time that week. Training simulation. She insisted on being his partner, then proceeded to show off by flipping over enemies and winking at him mid-battle. You're making this worse, Joran muttered one day as she leaned over his shoulder, fixing a circuit board he hadn't asked her to touch. I'm making it fun, she corrected, brushing a strand of white hair behind her ear. Besides, you should be flattered. Not every human gets courted by a Zelthari warrior. I don't want to be courted. I want to fix engines and not die in a firefight. Zanara grinned. Too bad. You're stuck with me now. Tradition says a proposal, even mistaken, carries weight. My elders might demand a bonding ceremony. Joran choked on his coffee. That's not how this works. It is how it works, she said, tapping his chest. Among my people, words have power. You spoke them. Now you must face the consequences. He groaned and buried his face in his hands. This was a nightmare. A hilarious, terrifying, galaxy-sized nightmare. But the worst part wasn't Zanara's relentless flirting. It was seeing Silra watch them. Every time Zanara draped an arm over Joran's shoulders, Silra was there. On the other side of the glass, standing guard, expression unreadable. Every time Zanara laughed at one of Joran's jokes, Silra would turn and walk away, her pace just a little too fast. Once, Joran caught her staring at the titanium ring he still kept in his pocket, the one he'd meant for Silra, if he'd ever been brave enough to use it. Their eyes met for a fleeting second, and in that moment, he saw it. Not anger, not jealousy, but sorrow. The quiet, crushing kind that comes from loving someone who doesn't see you. That night, Joran couldn't sleep. He sat on a ledge outside the observation deck, staring at the stars, the cold vacuum beyond the shield pressing against his thoughts. He replayed the proposal in his head, the laughter, the horror, Silra walking away. He thought about how she'd saved his life during the asteroid skirmish, how she'd covered him when the Reavers breached Sector 9, how she once brought him warm broth when he was sick with space fever. She'd never said a word about it, never asked for thanks, just did it. And he'd ruined it all by kneeling in front of her cousin with a tool ring. He had to fix this. The next day, during a lull between patrols, Joran tracked Silra down in the sparring chamber. She was alone, practicing combat forms with a plasma staff, moving like water and fire at once. He waited until she finished, breathing steadily, before stepping forward. Silra, he said softly. She didn't look at him. Mechanic Vex, your engine diagnostics are due in 2 hours. This isn't about engines. He took a deep breath. It was a mistake. The proposal. I meant it for you. That stopped her. Slowly, she turned, her silver eyes narrowing. You, what? I didn't know it was Zanara. I thought, no, that's not true. I knew it was her, but I was nervous and everyone was watching, and I thought maybe if I just said it, it would make things easier. He shook his head. But it wasn't you. It was never supposed to be anyone but you. Silra remained still. You chose her. No, Joran said firmly. I messed up, panicked, but my heart wasn't in it. It's always been with you. Since the first time you nodded at me in the briefing room. Since you handed me your helmet filter when mine failed. Since you stayed by my side when the medbay was full and I had a fever. For the first time, Silra's stern expression wavered. A flicker of emotion passed through her eyes. Hope, maybe, or fear. But now, Joran continued, Zanara thinks we're involved, and I can't just abandon her. Not after what I did. She might not love me, but I hurt her pride, and in your culture that matters. I can't leave her feeling used. And I can't lose you either. Silra studied him. So what do you propose, human? I don't know, he admitted. But I won't choose one by breaking the other. Not when I caused this mess. She was silent for a long time. Then, almost too quietly, she said, Among my people, there is an old custom. When a warrior causes disharmony between kin, they may enter a trial of balance, to serve both, honor both, and prove their worth not through choice, but through action. Joran frowned. What does that mean? It means, a voice interrupted, that you're going to work your tiny human butt off. Zanara strode into the room, arms crossed, a smirk on her lips. I've been listening. You're a mess, Joran Vex. A sweet, clumsy, grease-covered mess. And you owe us both. Silra turned to her. You heard. Of course I heard. The whole ship heard. But I'm not mad. She shrugged. Okay, I was mad for 5 minutes. Then I realized this is kind of fun. 2 warriors fighting over one little human? That's a story. Joran gaped. You're not upset? Oh, I'm upset, Zanara said, stepping closer. But not because you picked me by accident. I'm upset because you didn't pick me on purpose. And that's on you, not me. She poked his chest. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to earn us. Both of us. No choosing. No running. You prove you're worthy of a Zelthari bond. Not through pretty words, but through loyalty, courage, and surviving me. Silra nodded slowly. The trial begins now. And just like that, Joran's life became infinitely more complicated. The trial of balance was not official Zelthari law, it was more of a flexible tradition, one that existed in the gaps between rules and honor. It meant Joran had to prove himself to both women equally, without favor, without deception. He had to support them, protect them, and stand by them, not as a lover yet, but as a partner in spirit. And given that they were elite warriors and he was a mechanic with a fear of heights, it was going to be brutal. Zanara made sure of that. She started with physical challenges. If you're going to be linked to a warrior, she declared, you need to stop falling off hover platforms. So she dragged him into zero-gravity drills, where he flailed like a startled octopus while she floated gracefully, tossing him practice grenades. Catch, or explode. Silra took a different approach. She tested his courage. During a Reaver raid on Supply Outpost Gamma, she assigned him to her squad, not behind cover but right beside her. Stay close, she ordered. Watch my back. I'll watch yours. It was terrifying. Plasma fire lit the sky. Alien screeches filled the air. Joran's hands shook as he fired his sidearm, but he didn't run. When a Reaver lunged at Silra from behind, Joran tackled it with a wrench, screaming like a banshee. Silra dispatched it with a single strike, then gave him the faintest nod. Good reflexes. Zanara, meanwhile, tested his loyalty. She spread rumors that he was planning to transfer to another ship. When Silra confronted him, cold and distant, Joran didn't hesitate. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. I made a mess, and I'm staying to clean it up. With both of you. Silra's expression softened. Just a little. Days turned into weeks. The war raged on, but aboard the Auriga Prime, something new was forming. An odd, fragile triangle built on regret, redemption, and reluctant affection. Joran ate meals with both women now, sitting between them like a peace treaty. He helped Zanara modify her armor's targeting system, laughing as she teased him about his adorable focus face. He walked with Silra during quiet shifts, learning Zelthari chants and sharing stories of Earth. He still blushed when Zanara flirted, still trembled when Silra looked at him with those silver eyes, but he no longer ran. And then came the incident on Nova 6. A distress signal came from a derelict research station orbiting a dying star. The coalition sent a small team to investigate. Joran, Silra, and Zanara were on it. What they found was horrifying. A reaver nest, hidden in the station's core, pulsing with black organic tech. Before they could retreat, the doors sealed. The lights died, and the hunting began. They fought back to back, a trio moving as one. Silra led with precision, cutting through tendrils of dark matter. Zanara danced ahead, drawing fire, flipping over attacks with acrobatic fury. Joran wasn't a fighter, but he was smart. He rewired emergency systems, triggered overload sequences, and once, when a reaver leapt at Silra from above, he shoved her aside and took the blow on his armored shoulder. He went down hard, pain shooting through his body. "Joran!" Silra cried, spinning to defend him. Zanara didn't hesitate. She charged, screaming a Zelthari war cry, and drove her energy blade straight through the creature's core. It exploded in a shower of acidic mist. They regrouped. Joran was bleeding, his suit cracked. Silra knelt beside him, her hands gentle as she applied a biosealant. "You idiot!" she whispered, but her voice trembled. "Why did you do that?" "Because you're worth it," he said through gritted teeth. "Both of you." Zanara crouched down too, her usual smirk gone. "Don't die on us, grease monkey. We're not done with you yet." They escaped barely alive. The station collapsed behind them as their shuttle raced toward safety. Back on the Auriga Prime, Joran spent 3 days in recovery. And every day, both women visited him. One bringing healing crystals from her homeworld, the other sneaking in contraband earth candy to keep his spirits up. When he finally returned to duty, something had changed. The crew no longer whispered. They saluted. They smiled. The mechanic who fixed ships had become the man who stood between two warriors and refused to fall. No one knew what would happen next. Would Joran have to choose in the end? Could a human truly bond with two Zelthari warriors? Did Silra and Zanara even want the same future? But for now, as the Auriga Prime sailed toward the next battlefront, with stars blazing ahead and war humming in the engines, Joran walked through the halls with a strange peace in his heart. He had messed up everything. He had broken traditions, caused chaos, and nearly lost the woman he loved. But somehow, in the madness, he had found something rare. A second chance, not just with one, but with two extraordinary beings who, despite everything, hadn't given up on him. And as long as the war raged on, and the stars burned bright, he would keep trying. The days that followed the Nova 6 mission were different, quieter, softer, yet charged with a new kind of energy. It wasn't just the way the crew looked at Joran now, with something like awe instead of amusement. It was the way Silra and Zanara moved around him, not as rivals, not as competitors, but as two halves of a storm that had finally found its calm center him. He still worked in Engineering Bay 3, still covered in grease, still muttering to himself when a plasma coil refused to align. But now, when he wiped sweat from his brow, he'd look up to see Silra standing in the doorway, arms crossed, silver eyes watching him with a quiet intensity that made his breath catch. She didn't say much. She never did. But she stayed, sometimes for minutes, once, for nearly an hour, silently observing as he recalibrated the warp stabilizer. When he asked if something was wrong, she simply said, "I am ensuring your safety," and walked away before he could respond. Zanara, on the other hand, made sure he knew she was there. She'd slide into the seat beside him during meals with a dramatic flourish, toss a glowing fruit onto his tray, and declare, "Your daily dose of beauty and brilliance has arrived." She'd tease him about his mismatched socks, challenge him to 0G push-up contests, which he always lost, and once, during a long night shift, leaned her head on his shoulder while they watched the stars drift by through the observation window. "You're growing on me, grease monkey," she murmured, "like moss, annoying, but impossible to remove." Joran laughed, but his heart pounded, because beneath the jokes, beneath the wild energy, there was something real forming. A bond not born of grand gestures or instant passion, but of shared survival, of trust forged in fire and silence. One evening, after a minor skirmish with Reaver scouts left the station on high alert, Joran found himself alone in the meditation chamber, trying to quiet his mind. The adrenaline hadn't faded. His hands still trembled slightly from the near-miss explosion in Sector 5. He sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, breathing slowly, When the door slid open, he expected an officer, maybe the AI. Instead, both Silra and Zanara stepped inside. They didn't speak at first. Silra took a place to his left, folding herself gracefully into a seated position, back straight, hands resting on her knees. Zanara plopped down on his right like she was claiming territory, stretching her legs out with a sigh. For a long time, the only sound was the soft hum of the station and the distant pulse of the engines. Then, quietly, Zanara said, "You fought well today." Silra nodded. "You stayed focused, even when the corridor collapsed." Joran opened his eyes. "I almost didn't. I froze for a second. Thought I was going to die." "You didn't," Silra said, "because we were there. And you weren't alone," Zanara added. "That's the point, isn't it?" Joran looked between them. Silra, serene and strong, her presence like a mountain. Zanara, vibrant and restless, like lightning in a bottle. And here he was, small, human, fragile, caught between two forces of nature who had somehow decided he was worth protecting. "I don't understand how this works," he admitted. "Two warriors, one mechanic. No rules, no clear path. Just us." "There are no ancient texts for this," Silra said, a rare hint of dry humor in her voice. "But among my people, bonds are not measured by numbers but by depth. If the heart is true, the form does not matter." Zanara smirked. "And if anyone gives us trouble, I'll punch them in the face. Problem solved." Joran laughed, but his eyes stung. "You both mean more to me than I can say. Not because you're beautiful, which you are, but because you stayed. Even when I messed up. Even when I didn't deserve it." Silra reached out, slow and deliberate, and placed her hand over his. Her skin was cool, smooth, and her touch sent a shiver through him. "You earned it," she said. "Not through words, through action." Zanara placed her hand on top of theirs, completing the circle. "So no more running, no more hiding. You're stuck with us, Joran Vex, whether you like it or not." He smiled, tears slipping free despite himself. "I like it," he whispered, "more than anything." From that night on, something shifted. They weren't just a man and two women tangled in confusion. They were becoming a unit, a trio bound not by tradition but by choice. They trained together now. Not just Silra dragging Joran into combat drills, but all three of them. Zanara taught him hand-to-hand techniques, laughing when he tripped over his own feet, then patiently correcting his stance. Silra guided him through Zelthari breathing exercises, helping him control his fear, sharpen his focus. And Joran? He taught them earth things, how to make coffee without burning it, the meaning behind old songs, why humans hugged instead of bowing. Once, during a rare downtime, he played a recording of a classical piano piece, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, on a salvaged audio device. The room dimmed. The music filled the space, soft and haunting. Silra closed her eyes, listening intently. Zanara rested her head on Joran's shoulder, unusually quiet. When it ended, Silra opened her eyes and said, "It sounds like longing." Zanara nodded. "And hope, like someone reaching through the dark." Joran smiled. "Yeah, that's exactly what it is." They began sharing quarters, not officially, not in any coalition rulebook sense, but in the way that matters. Joran's bunk became a meeting point. Silra would arrive late at night, sit beside him while he repaired broken comms units, and sometimes, if he fell asleep mid-sentence, she'd cover him with a thermal blanket and stay until dawn. Zanara would burst in during the day, drag him to the mess hall, dance with him in empty corridors when the alarms weren't blaring, and once, when he caught a fever from a contaminated air filter, she stayed awake for 36 hours, changing cooling pads and feeding him broth like a nurse from some old Earth movie. "You're spoiling me," he croaked one night, half delirious. "Damn right I am," she said, brushing hair from his forehead. "You think I'm letting you die before I get that proper proposal?" He chuckled weakly. "What if I propose to the wrong one again?" She grinned. "Then I'll let Silra fight me for you. Winner takes all." When he recovered, he found a handmade bracelet on his desk, woven from Zelthari memory thread, capable of shifting color based on emotion. Silra gave it to him wordlessly. "A gift," she said, "to remind you, you are not alone." He wore it every day. As the war pressed on, the Auriga Prime was deployed deeper into enemy space. The Reavers grew bolder, launching surprise attacks from folded dimensions, their ships appearing like shadows given form. Casualties rose. Morale wavered. But in the heart of the chaos, Joran, Silra, and Zanara became a symbol, unofficial, unexpected, but undeniable. They fought side by side, not just in battle but in spirit. When morale dipped after a devastating loss at Proxima Rift, it was Joran who organized a makeshift concert in the hangar, playing guitar, badly, while Zanara danced and Silra stood guard, a faint smile on her lips. When a young recruit broke down after her squad was wiped out, it was Silra who knelt beside her, offering silent strength, while Zanara cracked jokes to lighten the mood, and Joran brought hot soup and sat with her until she slept. They were becoming something none of them had imagined. Not just lovers, not just partners, but a family. A strange, mismatched, interstellar family built on second chances and stubborn hearts. One night, during a rare ceasefire, they stood together on Observation Deck 7, the same place where Zanara had once flirted with Joran under false pretenses. Now, they stood as equals, shoulders touching, staring at the endless sea of stars. "It's beautiful," Joran said softly. "All of it, even the war, because it led me here." Silra turned to him. "You still wish for peace?" "Every day," he said. "But I've learned something. Peace isn't just the end of war. It's who you're standing next to when the fighting stops." Zanara looped an arm around his waist and nudged Silra with her elbow. "So, does this mean we're official?" Silra raised an eyebrow. "Official how?" "I don't know. Bonded, mated, entangled, whatever fancy word your people use." Silra considered it. Then, slowly, she reached into her armor and pulled out a small, ornate pendant, carved from blue crystal, glowing faintly. "Among the Zelthari," she said, "when three souls walk the same path, we do not bind two and leave one behind. We forge a triad, a union of balance, loyalty, and shared fate. It is rare, almost forgotten, but not impossible." Joran's breath caught. "You're saying?" "I am saying," Silra continued, stepping forward, "that if you accept this, you are not choosing one of us. You are choosing us. Both. Together. Forever." Zanara grinned, but her eyes shimmered. "Well, what do you say, grease monkey? Ready to be properly claimed?" Joran looked at them. Silra, steady and deep as the ocean. Zanara, bright and fierce as a supernova. Two warriors, two hearts, one impossible, beautiful future. He took the pendant, then reached into his pocket and pulled out the titanium ring, the one that had started it all. "I messed up once," he said, voice thick, "but I won't again." He held the ring out to them both. "This was meant for love, and I found it in both of you." Silra took the ring gently, then placed it beside the pendant in his palm. "Then let it be a part of the bond." Zanara grabbed his hand and squeezed. "No more mistakes, no more running, just us, against the universe." Joran closed his fingers around the tokens, heart full. "Just us." And as the stars burned on, silent witnesses to the birth of something new, the three of them stood together. Mechanic and warriors, human and alien, past the wreckage of a mistaken proposal, beyond the pain of unspoken love, into a future written not in rules, but in courage, laughter, and the quiet certainty that sometimes the biggest messes lead to the most extraordinary destinies. The war was far from over. The Reavers still lurked in the dark. But for the first time, Joran didn't just fight to survive. He fought to protect what he had found. And that made all the difference. Years passed like drifting comets, bright, fast, and unforgettable. The war with the Void Reavers did not end in a single battle, but over decades, through sacrifice, strategy, and the slow unraveling of the enemy's dark core. Peace, when it finally came, was not a trumpet blast, but a quiet dawn spreading across the stars. The Auriga Prime, once a war-worn fortress, was repurposed into a mobile academy for interstellar cooperation, a symbol of what unity could build from the ashes of conflict. And at the heart of that peace stood three figures who had become legend. Joran Vex, the human mechanic who spoke to machines like they were old friends, was now honored as a hero of the Coalition, not for wielding weapons, but for keeping hope alive when engines failed and morale shattered. Silra, the stoic Zelthari commander, retired with full honors, her name etched into the Hall of Guardians for her unmatched courage and wisdom. And Zanara, the wild, fearless warrior who turned battles into performances, became a beloved instructor, teaching young soldiers how to fight, laugh, and live all at once. But their greatest achievement wasn't written in medals or history files. It was written in laughter echoing through the halls of a modest homestead on Elora 9, a lush, blue-green world nestled in a quiet sector of space, where rivers shimmered under twin suns and the air smelled of blooming star lilies. There, surrounded by rolling hills and floating gardens grown from alien and earth seeds alike, stood their home. A sprawling, mismatched structure built over time, piece by Joran's hands and the combined stubbornness of his two wives. Solar panels hummed on the roof, crafted by Joran. Defensive wards pulsed gently around the perimeter, woven by Silra's ancestral magic. And the front door, painted neon pink, covered in handprints, stickers, and one very proud declaration in glowing script. Zanara was here, and so were her kids. Because there were kids. So many kids. Their first child, a girl named Lyra, inherited Silra's calm silver eyes and Joran's mischievous grin. She could fix a broken drone before she could read. And at age 6, rerouted the house's power grid to make the lights dance. Their second, a boy named Kalen, named after an old friend Joran refused to explain, had Zanara's wild white hair and boundless energy. He once tried to ride a domesticated sky lizard to school and nearly succeeded. Then came twins, Nyx and Mira. One quiet and thoughtful like Silra, the other loud and dramatic like Zanara, who argued constantly but would instantly unite against any outsider who dared tease their father. After that, well, no one really kept count. There was little Rin, who communicated entirely in giggles and hand signs until he was 5. Then came little Vale, born during a meteor shower, whose skin shimmered faintly blue in the dark, a rare genetic blend never seen before in human Zelthari lineage. Then another boy, then another girl, then 2 more who arrived together in a surprise double birth that left Joran pacing the healing chamber for 12 hours straight, muttering about never surviving this. By the time 10 years of peace had settled, the house on Elora 9 was bursting at the seams. Cribs in the garage, bunk beds hanging from the ceiling, tiny footprints on every surface, and toys scattered like debris from a joyful explosion. And yet, it was perfect. Mornings began with chaos. Children tumbling over each other for breakfast, Joran flipping protein pancakes while Silra calmly handed out nutrient packs, and Zanara launching into exaggerated stories of her glorious past. I once fought a reaver with a spoon. True story. Afternoons were for learning, Silra teaching meditation and combat discipline, Zanara running obstacle courses that looked more like circus acts, and Joran holding invention class, where kids built flying contraptions that usually crashed, but sometimes didn't. Evenings were for stillness. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in gold and violet, the family gathered on the wide porch. The children curled up on blankets, some already half asleep, others begging for one more story. And every night, without fail, Joran would begin the same way. Once, he'd say, voice warm and rough like old leather, there was a mechanic who made the biggest mistake of his life. The kids would giggle, knowing the tale by heart. He proposed to the wrong alien warrior, and she laughed in his face, one would shout, and the right warrior walked away. Another would whisper dramatically. Joran would smile, glancing at Silra, who sat beside him, serene as ever, her hand resting in his. Then at Zanara, lounging on the other side, tossing a small energy orb up and down like a nervous habit. But he didn't give up, Joran continued. He fought, not with weapons but with honesty, with love. And slowly, somehow, 2 warriors decided to give him a chance. Not just one, both. And they lived happily ever after, a little voice would chirp. Not quite, Zanara would interrupt, grinning. First, we made him suffer. A lot. Silra would chuckle, soft, rare, beautiful, and say, he earned every moment. And then, without fail, the youngest would ask, Daddy, do you love Mama Silra more? Joran would shake his head. No. Do you love Mama Zanara more? Another would probe. He'd look between them, his warriors, his heart, his life, and say, I love you all the same, not because I have to, because I can't imagine breathing without both of you. Zanara would roll her eyes and say, cheesy. Before leaning into him, Silra would simply squeeze his hand, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. And in those quiet moments, as the wind whispered through the trees and the children drifted to sleep, Joran would feel it, the deep, unshakable truth of his life. He had not chosen one over the other. He had built something new, something rare, something real. They weren't just a family. They were a miracle. And as the stars watched over Elora 9, silent and eternal, the laughter of children, the warmth of 3 hearts intertwined, and the simple joy of a life well lived floated into the night, proof that even in a universe scarred by war, love, in all its strange, messy, glorious forms, always found a way to bloom.